Hello, buddy. Welcome back to Tin Man's Core Channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I'll be reacting to my second scary storyteller. And this one is Mr. Haunting. And the video I'll be reacting to is 3 very creepy true night drive horror stories. So without further ado, I'm going to turn these lights off, move the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the road and in the bag, shall we? Okie dokie, here we go.
For most people, a late-night drive is calming.
Right.
Empty roads, cool air, maybe some quiet music. For Daniel, those drives were routine. He worked the closing shift at a hardware store and usually found himself driving home close to midnight. The route was simple. One long stretch of highway surrounded by fields and woods. It was quiet, predictable, and, at least until one particular night, safe.
I mean, I would agree with that because every time my parents drove around somewhere and it was nighttime, that cool breeze hitting you through the window feels nice. It definitely will keep you awake, that's for sure. And you don't see that much traffic unless you see a a-hole speed up right next to you, like they're in a hurry. But anyway, let's continue with this story and see what happens next.
That evening started like any other. Daniel grabbed a cup of gas station coffee, turned on the radio, and hit the road. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, painted only by the beam of his headlights. In the rearview mirror, there was nothing but black sky and a ribbon of asphalt. About 20 minutes into his drive, he noticed a pair of headlights appear in the distance behind him. They grew closer until they settled directly on his bumper. Daniel figured the driver would just pass him. Everyone did eventually, but this car didn't. He changed lanes. The car followed. He slowed down. The car slowed down. Now the headlights filled his mirrors, glaring so bright he could barely see. His chest tightened. Maybe the driver was drunk? Or maybe it was some impatient teenager trying to mess with him.
You know, all them thoughts would be running through my mind if I was driving by myself and somebody would turn on the bright lights and getting close to you. But sometimes, like I said earlier, they might be in a hurry to get somewhere, so they just drive over the other line and pass you. But I guarantee you that's probably someone tailing you just to see where you live at, and they can jump you out of your truck vehicle and rob you and all your stuff in your house. So at this point, I'll be trying to find a lot of roads to turn on to not lure them to my place of residence.
Either way, Daniel gripped the wheel tighter and told himself to ignore it. But the driver wasn't ignoring him. Whenever Daniel accelerated, the car matched his speed. Whenever he switched lanes, it shifted right with him. And then, just when Daniel thought it might finally pass, the car swerved slightly into the next lane, before easing back behind him again. Deliberate, teasing. The unease in Daniel's gut grew into panic. He checked his phone, no signal. Out here, you could drive 10 miles before getting a single bar. Up ahead, he spotted a blue sign for a rest stop. Relief flooded through him. With a sharp turn, he pulled off the highway and into the nearly empty lot. The car followed. Daniel parked near the building under one of the tall lamps. His plan was simple. Jump out, get inside, and let the cameras and cashier scare this person off. But when he turned to look, his stomach dropped. The car hadn't parked. It was idling at the far end of the lot, its headlights still on him. The driver sat motionless. Daniel forced himself to act casual. He walked into the building, bought a snack he didn't need, and tried to calm his shaking hands. The cashier looked at him funny, but Daniel didn't explain. Through the window, those headlights still burned in the distance.
I mean, I would have been telling the cashier what's going on, because it just seems like that guy won't leave you alone until you get back in your car and start moving again. I'll be telling the cashier lady, can you look at the security cameras at that car? It's been following me non-stop. See if we get the license plate on it and call the cops, because that's sketchy.
10 minutes passed, then 15. Finally, Daniel thought maybe it was safe to leave. The moment he stepped outside, the headlights clicked off. Darkness swallowed the car. Daniel's heart skipped. For a brief second, he thought the driver had left. But then the engine roared to life, and the car began rolling toward him. Daniel sprinted to his own vehicle, fumbling with the keys, and slammed inside. Tires squealed behind him as he tore out of the rest stop. Back on the highway, the chase began again. 80 miles per hour. 90. Still, the car stayed locked on him, like a predator unwilling to lose its prey. Daniel's vision blurred with panic. His hands were slick on the wheel. He prayed for another driver, anyone else, to appear on the dark road. And then, as if his prayer was answered, he saw lights ahead. A cluster of 3 cars traveling together. Daniel floored the gas, merging into their group. He slid between 2 SUVs, heart hammering, his eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. The sedan slowed down. Its headlights shrank in the distance. Then they disappeared entirely. Daniel stayed with the group all the way to his exit. Even after pulling into his driveway, he sat for several minutes, shaking, staring at the street, waiting to see if those headlights would return. They never did. The next morning, he checked his car for scratches, notes, anything that might explain what happened. Nothing. Whoever that driver was, they hadn't wanted to rob him. They hadn't even tried to run him off the road. They had just followed. And that was what unsettled Daniel the most. Because sometimes, not knowing what a stranger wants is more terrifying than knowing.
You got that right. Almost like that guy was just toying with him. But man, I wish there was a highway patrol officer right there in that area. And when he saw, just so if he sees them two speeding, he could pull over the one that's being chased and he can explain why he was speeding. But then the other guy would just floor it out of there. But I'm just glad that this individual didn't follow him home since he lost him in the group of cars. And he's okay. So let's get to story number 2.
On a dark, empty highway, the scariest thing isn't being alone. It's realizing someone out there has chosen to follow only you.
Which is scary.
Mark was a truck driver used to long hours behind the wheel. The open road didn't scare him. If anything, he found it peaceful. He'd been driving highways at night for years, and apart from the occasional deer darting across the asphalt, nothing ever unsettled him. That changed on a quiet stretch of road in the middle of nowhere. It was 2 a.m., and Mark was hauling a small load through farmland. The night was thick with fog, his headlights barely cutting through it. There were no other cars in sight, not for miles. He turned down the radio, keeping his focus on the dark road. Then, up ahead in the mist, he saw something that made him ease off the gas. A figure. Someone was standing on the shoulder of the highway. At first, he thought it was just another hitchhiker. He'd seen plenty in his time. But as his truck drew closer, details came into focus. The figure was tall, unnaturally thin, with clothes that looked ragged and torn. They weren't holding a sign or a bag or anything at all, just standing perfectly still, staring into the road. Mark slowed down, debating whether to stop. But something about the figure felt wrong. Their posture was stiff, their head tilted at an odd angle, like their neck couldn't hold the weight. As his truck passed, the figure turned its head. Not slowly, not like a normal person. It snapped toward him, eyes catching the beam of his headlights. Mark's skin prickled. The man's face, or what looked like a face, was pale, almost gray, with hollow, sunken eyes that seemed too wide. The truck roared past, and for a moment, Mark thought it was over. He gripped the wheel, telling himself it was just exhaustion playing tricks on him. Then he checked his mirror. The figure was walking into the road. Mark's stomach dropped. He pressed harder on the accelerator, his truck rattling as the speedometer climbed. But when he looked again, his chest tightened even more. The figure was closer. It wasn't possible. He hadn't stopped. He hadn't slowed. Yet somehow, in the space of a few seconds, the figure had covered distance it shouldn't have been able to.
Okay, you might be dealing with something paranormal, because how can somebody or something be right there on one part of the road and then when you're past it, it covered distance a lot faster than you? That's unnatural.
Mark cursed under his breath, sweat dripping down his neck. He flipped the radio back on, needing the noise, anything to drown out the pounding of his heart. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The fog grew even heavier. That's when he saw it again. Up ahead, in the exact same spot where he'd first seen it, the figure stood by the side of the road. Mark slammed the brakes, his tires screeching. Couldn't be. There was no way. But as his headlights illuminated the fog, there it was, Ragged clothes, pale skin, head tilted unnaturally. It hadn't just kept up with him. Somehow it had gotten ahead. This time, Mark didn't slow. He pressed down hard on the gas, swerving slightly to give the figure a wide berth. He gritted his teeth, refusing to look as he passed. But his curiosity betrayed him. For a split second, his eyes flicked toward the passenger side. The figure was closer to the road now, leaning forward, almost reaching for the truck. And those eyes, sunken, wide, and unblinking, followed him as he passed. Mark didn't check the mirror. He didn't want to. He just drove faster and faster.
Hey, I wouldn't blame him either, because if you keep checking the mirrors, you'll be paranoid. Just keep seeing this entity messing with you, and you keep trying to look at it, you'll definitely have a heart attack or pull your truck off the side of the road. So don't try to keep paying attention to it. Just keep going to where you're heading.
Until finally, a green sign appeared. A rest area 1 mile ahead. He pulled in, parking under the fluorescent lights, his hands trembling as he killed the engine. Other trucks and cars dotted the lot, and the presence of people calmed him. Mark stayed there until dawn, sitting in his cab, chain-smoking cigarettes, too shaken to close his eyes. When he finally got back on the road in the daylight, there was nothing unusual about the stretch of highway. Just fields, fog burned away by the sun, and miles of empty road. But even now, years later, he refuses to drive that route at night. Because whatever he saw on the side of that highway wasn't just a man looking for a ride. Some things on the side of the road aren't asking for help. They're waiting for you to stop.
Which, that is creepy. If it was a normal human being, I'll see if they need a ride. But if it's something beyond this world, once you pass them and then they show up again in another spot on the road, I will lose it. But I don't blame him for not driving on that route again, because I know he will be terrified for life seeing it multiple times over again. But thank God there was a rest stop around that area to make him pull off and relax his nerves. Because if he kept on going, he probably would have accidentally turned over his truck or have a heart attack behind the wheel. That is something that I do not want to experience, and I know everybody else don't want to experience while they're either driving a big rig or just a regular car on the highway.
David was no stranger to long drives. He loved the open road, especially at night, when traffic was thin and the quiet gave him space to think. On one chilly autumn night, he was making his way back home after visiting family, his car cutting through winding country roads. The moon hung low, the air was still, and the world seemed empty. That was when he saw her. At first, it was just a silhouette up ahead, someone standing near the edge of the road, arm raised slightly like they were trying to wave down a car. As his headlights swept over her, the details became clearer. It was a young woman, maybe in her 20s, wearing a pale dress that looked out of place for the weather. Her hair was long and dark, tangled slightly in the breeze. David slowed down. It wasn't unusual to see someone stranded, but there was something about her that tugged at him. She didn't look threatening, just lost. Against his better judgment, he rolled to a stop. She leaned down toward his open passenger window. "Could you give me a ride?" she asked softly, her voice thin but polite. David hesitated only for a moment before unlocking the door.
I mean, if you see a woman desperate for a ride, what are you going to do? You leave her there, she's going to think badly of you. And you never know if she was trying to run away from a bad spouse or her car broke down and she needed a lift. That's what I'm thinking here. But I guarantee you something crazy is about to happen here.
She climbed in, folding her hands in her lap. Up close, she seemed even paler, her skin almost translucent under the glow of the dashboard lights. "Where are you headed?" he asked. She gave him a small smile. "Just a little further down this road. I'll tell you when to stop." They drove in silence for a while. David tried making small talk, asking if she was from the area, if she needed to call anyone, but her answers were brief and vague. She didn't offer much, and eventually he let the silence take over. Still, something gnawed at him. Every time he glanced at her, she seemed distant, not just distracted, but like her mind was somewhere else entirely. After about 10 minutes, she finally spoke again. "You can stop just up ahead," she said. pointing to a narrow dirt lane branching off the highway. David slowed, turning his head to look at her. Here? He asked, but when his eyes flicked to the passenger seat, it was empty. His stomach dropped. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. He swore she had been there just a second ago. He could still smell the faint scent of damp earth, like wet leaves clinging to her clothes. Shaken, David pulled over, the car idling as he searched the seat, the floor, the back seat. Nothing. She was gone. He sat frozen for several minutes, heart pounding, trying to convince himself he was overtired, hallucinating, anything. But then he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The passenger seat belt was still buckled. He hadn't touched it. She had. David didn't sleep that night. Instead, he drove straight through until he reached home, too rattled to stop. The next morning, curiosity and unease gnawed at him. He told a friend what had happened, half expecting to be laughed at. But instead, his friend grew serious. "There's a story about that road," he said. "Years ago, a young woman died in a car accident right where that dirt lane begins. People say she still appears to drivers, asking for rides, trying to get home." David didn't know what to believe. All he knew was that he had picked up someone that night. He had seen her, spoken to her, even heard the seatbelt click. And then she had vanished. Now, whenever he drives that stretch of road, he keeps his doors locked and his eyes fixed on the center line. Because sometimes, late at night, he thinks he sees a pale figure standing by the roadside, arm outstretched, waiting for another driver to stop. Some passengers never make it to their destination because they've already been there too long.
Okay, I was thinking something totally different, like you're picking up a strange person and they probably would act out crazy and try to attack you or rob you. But nope, turned out to be a ghost of a woman that died on that road due to a car crash. And that is spooky. Because imagine you just pick up someone you think is a normal living human being, like solid to the flesh. But then when you get to their destination, the seat that they're in is gone, like empty, and the seatbelt is still creepy. My mind will be baffled if I experience something like that. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more Mr. Haunting related content like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man's Core channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor. That's a wrap, and have a nice day, home.